Would you like to make a podcast? Spotify has a way to let you make one easily, distribute it everywhere, and even earn money, all in one place, for free. It's called Spotify for Podcasters, and here's how it works. Spotify for Podcasters lets you record and edit right from your phone or computer, so you can start creating today. Then you can distribute your podcast to Spotify, and everywhere else podcasts are heard. And video podcasts are also available on Spotify. With Spotify for Podcasters, you can earn money in a variety of ways, including ads and podcast subscriptions. And best of all, it's totally free. You know, ever since I discovered Spotify for Podcasters, I've enjoyed sharing my favorite stories with children around the world. If you've ever thought of starting your own podcast, download the Spotify for Podcasters app or go to spotify.com/podcasters to get started. Welcome to Bedtime Stories. Please make sure you press follow to get notified of new stories and leave a rating. If you enjoyed today's story, forward it to a friend. And now, the Tale of Samuel Whiskers. Once upon a time there was an old cat called Mrs. Tabitha Twitchit, who was an anxious parent. She used to lose her kittens continually, and whenever they were lost, they were always into mischief. On baking day, she determined to shut them up in a cupboard. She caught Moppet and Mittens, but she could not find Tom. Mrs. Tabitha went up and down all over the house, meowing for Tom Kitten. She looked in the pantry under the staircase and searched the best spare bedroom that was all covered up in dust sheets. She went right upstairs and looked in the attics, but she could not find him anywhere. It was an old house, full of cupboards and passages. Some of the walls were 4 feet thick, and there used to be strange noises inside them, as if there might be a little secret staircase. Certainly there were odd little jagged doorways in the walls, and things disappeared at night, especially cheese and bacon. Mrs. Tabitha became more and more distracted, and meowed dreadfully. While their mother was searching the house, Moppet and Mittens had got into mischief. The cupboard door was not locked, so they pushed it open and came out. They went straight to the dough, which was set to rise in a pan before the fire. They patted it with their soft little paws. "Shall we make dear little muffins?" said Mittens to Moppet. But just at that moment, somebody knocked at the front door, and Moppet jumped into the flour barrel in a fright. Mittens ran away to the dairy and hid in an empty jar on the stone shelf where the milk pans stand. The visitor was a neighbor, Mrs. Rigby. She had called to borrow some yeast. Mrs. Tabitha came downstairs, meowing dreadfully. "Come in, Cousin Rigby, come in and sit down." "I'm in sad trouble, Cousin Rigby," said Tabitha, shedding tears. "I've lost my dear son Thomas. I'm afraid the rats have gotten him." She wiped her eyes with her apron. "He's a bad kitten, Cousin Tabitha. He made a cat's cradle out of my best bonnet last time I came to tea. Where have you looked for him?" "All over the house. The rats are too many for me. What a thing it is to have an unruly family," said Tabitha Twitchit. "I am not afraid of rats. I will help you find them. What is all that soot in the fender?" "The chimney wants sweeping." "Oh, my dear Cousin Rigby, now Moppet and Mittens are gone. They have both got out of the cupboard." Rigby and Tabitha set to work to search the house thoroughly again. They poked under the beds with Rigby's umbrella, and they rummaged in the cupboards. They even fetched a candle and looked inside a clothes chest in one of the attics. They could not find anything, but once they heard a door bang, and somebody scuttered downstairs. "Yes, it is infested with rats," said Tabitha tearfully. "I caught 7 young ones out in a hole in the back kitchen, and once I saw an old father rat, an enormous old rat, Cousin Rigby. I was just going to jump on him when he showed me his yellow teeth, and he whisked down a hole." "The rats get on my nerves, Cousin Rigby," said Tabitha. Rigby and Tabitha searched and searched. They both heard a roly-poly noise under the attic floor, but there was nothing to be seen. They returned to the kitchen. "Here's one of the kittens at least," said Rigby, dragging Moppet out of the flour barrel. They shook the flour off her and set her down on the kitchen floor. She seemed to be in a terrible fright. "Oh, Mother, Mother," said Moppet, "there's an old woman rat in the kitchen, and she's stolen some of the dough." The two cats ran to look at the dough pan. Sure enough, there were marks of little scratching fingers, and a lump of dough was gone. "Which way did she go, Moppet?" But Moppet had been too frightened to peep out of the barrel again. Rigby and Tabitha took her with them to keep her safely in sight while they went on their search. They went into the dairy, and first thing they found was Mittens, hiding in an empty jar. They tipped up the jar, and she scrambled out. "Oh, Mother, Mother," said Mittens, "there's an old man rat in the dairy, a dreadful, enormous, big rat, Mother, and he's stolen a pat of butter and the rolling pin." Rigby and Tabitha looked at one another. "A rolling pin and butter! Oh, my poor son Thomas!" exclaimed Tabitha, wringing her paws. "A rolling pin?" said Rigby. "Did we not hear a roly-poly noise in the attic when we were looking into that chest?" Rigby and Tabitha rushed upstairs again. Sure enough, the roly-poly noise was still going on quite distinctly under the attic floor. "This is serious, Cousin Tabitha," said Rigby. "We must send for John Joyner at once with the saw." Now this is what had been happening to Tom Kitten, and it shows how very unwise it is to go up a chimney in a very old house, where a person does not know his way, and where there are enormous rats. Tom Kitten did not want to be shut up in a cupboard. When he saw that his mother was going to bake, he was determined to hide. He looked about for a convenient place, and he focused on the chimney. The fire had only just been lit, and it was not hot, but there was a white, choky smoke from the green sticks. Tom Kitten got up on the fender and looked up. It was a big, old-fashioned fireplace. The chimney itself was wide enough inside for a man to stand up and walk about, so there was plenty of room for a little tomcat. He jumped right up into the fireplace, balancing himself on the iron bar where the kettle hangs. Tom Kitten took another big jump off the bar and landed on a ledge high up inside the chimney, knocking down some soot into the fender. Tom Kitten coughed and choked with the smoke, and he could hear the sticks beginning to crackle and burn in the fireplace down below. He made up his mind to climb up to the top and get out on the slates and try to catch some sparrows. "I cannot go back. If I slipped, I might fall into the fire and singe my beautiful tail and my little blue jacket." The chimney was a very big old-fashioned one, and it was built in the days when people burnt logs of wood upon the hearth. The chimney stack stood high above the roof like a little stone tower, and the daylight shone down from the top under the slanting slates that kept out the rain. Tom Kitten was getting very frightened. He climbed up and up and up. Then he waded sideways through inches of soot. He was like a little sweep himself. It was most confusing in the dark. One flue seemed to lead into another. There was less smoke, but Tom Kitten felt quite lost. He scrambled up and up, but before he reached the chimney top, he came to a place where somebody had loosened a stone in the wall. There were some mutton bones lying about. "This seems funny," said Tom Kitten. "Who's been gnawing bones up here in the chimney? I wish I had never come. And what is that funny smell? It is something like a mouse, only dreadfully strong. It makes me sneeze." He squeezed through the hole in the wall and dragged himself along the most uncomfortably tight passage, where there was scarcely any light. He groped his way carefully for several yards. He was at the back of the skirting board in the attic. All at once he fell head over heels in the dark, down a hole, and landed on a heap of dirty rags. When Tom Kitten picked himself up and looked about, he found himself in a place he'd never seen before, although he had lived all his life in the house. It was a very small, stuffy room, with boards and rafters and cobwebs. Opposite him, as far away as he could sit, was an enormous rat. "What do you mean tumbling into my bed all covered with smuts?" said the rat, chattering his teeth. "Please, sir, the chimney wants sweeping," said poor Tom Kitten. "Anna Maria, Anna Maria," squeaked the rat. There was a pattering noise, and an old woman rat poked her head around the rafter. All in a minute she rushed upon Tom Kitten, and before he knew what was happening, his coat was pulled off, and he was rolled up in a bundle and tied with string with very hard knots. Anna Maria did all the tying. The old rat just watched her. When she had finished, they both sat there staring at him with their mouths wide open. "Anna Maria," said the old man rat, whose name was Samuel Whiskers. "Anna Maria, make me a kitten dumpling roly-poly pudding for my dinner. It requires dough and a pat of butter and a rolling pin," said Anna Maria, considering Tom Kitten with her head to one side. "No," said Samuel Whiskers. "Make it properly, Anna Maria, with breadcrumbs." "Nonsense, butter and dough," replied Anna Maria. The two rats consulted together for a few minutes, and then went away. Samuel Whiskers got through a hole in the wall, and went boldly down the front staircase to the dairy to get the butter. He did not meet anybody. He then made a second journey for the rolling pin. He pushed it out in front of him with his paws, like a man pushing a barrel. He could hear Rigby and Tabitha talking, but they were too busy lighting the candle to look into the chest, so they did not see him. Anna Marie went down by way of skirting board and window shutter to the kitchen to steal the dough. She borrowed a small saucer and scooped up the dough with her paws. She did not see Moppet. While Tom Kitten was left alone under the floor of the attic, he wriggled about and tried to meow for help, but his mouth was full of soot and cobwebs, and he was tied up in such very tight knots he could not make anybody hear him, except a spider, which came out of a crack in the ceiling and examined the knots critically from a safe distance. Unfortunately, he did not offer any assistance, so Tom Kitten wriggled and squirmed until he was quite exhausted. The rats came back and set to work to make him into a dumpling. First they smeared him with butter, and then they rolled him in dough. "Will not the string be very indigestible, Anna Maria?" inquired Samuel Whiskers. Anna Maria said that she thought it would be of no consequence, but she wished Tom Kitten would hold still, as it disarranged the pastry. She grabbed a hold of his ears. Tom Kitten bit, meowed, and wriggled, while the rats each held one end of the rolling pin. "His tail is sticking out. You did not fetch enough dough, Anna Maria." "I fetched as much as I could carry," replied Anna Maria. "I do not think so," said Samuel Whiskers, pausing to take a look at Tom Kitten. "I do not think this is going to be good pudding. It smells sooty." Anna Maria was about to argue the point, when all at once there began to be other sounds up above. The rasping noise of a saw, the noise of a little dog scratching and yelping. The rats dropped the rolling pin and listened attentively. "We've been discovered and interrupted, Anna Maria. Let us collect our property at once." "Come at once and help me tie up some mutton bones," said Anna Maria. "I've got half a smoked ham hidden in the chimney." And so it happened that by the time John Joyner had got the plank up, there was nobody under the floor except a rolling pin and Tom Kitten in a very dirty dumpling. But there was a strong smell of rats, and John Joyner spent the rest of the morning sniffing and hunting. Then he nailed the plank back down again and put his tools in his bag and came downstairs. The cat family had quite recovered. They invited him to stay for dinner. The dumpling had been pulled off Tom Kitten and made separately into a bag pudding, although they were obliged to put Tom Kitten into a hot bath to get off all the butter. Thank you for listening to Bedtime Stories. Please make sure you press follow to get notified of new stories and leave a rating. If you enjoyed today's story, forward it to a friend. If you have a suggestion for a new story, send us an email, magicmonorail@gmail.com. Until next time, good night.